The speed square is a great tool to have, and I've used it in a bunch of my recent videos. Now, I wanted to show you some tips and tricks on exactly how to use this in your shop so you can get the most benefits from it. There are two common sizes when it comes to a speed square. First off is the 7-inch, which is what I use mostly in my workshop, and you have the 12-inch, which you'll see a lot of home builders use. For most DIYers, I'd recommend getting the 7-inch square. That's the one I usually grab the most, but they come in a variety of different styles. For example, this one right here, you'll notice all the numbers and all the little hash marks are highly detailed, making it easy to read. Versus this one, well, that one can be a little bit challenging. Now, they do make a plastic version of these, but I highly recommend getting the metal version instead for two reasons. First off, if you bump plastic really hard, what's it gonna do? Break, of course. Not likely to happen with metal. Also, if you are working on a roof and you set this down on a really hot surface, guess what? That plastic, well, there's a very good chance it might melt. Not gonna happen with the metal. Another quick note is to see that these are inches on the sides here. If you don't like inches and you prefer metric, they also make that version as well. Now, the most common uses for a speed square is to make 90-degree and 45-degree angles. Now, there is a lip down here on the bottom of your speed square. You can see there. What you want to do is you want to take that lip and you would put it along your flat surface that you want to make your 90-degree or 45-degree angle. Make sure you pull it nice and tight against it, and then on this side you can make a quick 90-degree line. Now, if you want to do 45, that's what this other side is for. Do the same thing, pull it nice and tight, and you can do a quick 45-degree angle. Flip it over, you can do the same thing, making sure to line up everything at the bottom there. And there you go. 45 degrees from your flat surface here, and those to themselves are also 90 degrees. Real easy. Now, if we look at the side of our speed square, not only do we have the inches on the side over here, but we have a bunch of other numbers, including angles and a bunch of other cuts and cutouts and things that we're going to try and go over real quickly. Let's first look at these angles out here. Now, say you needed a line that's something other than 90 or 45 degrees. I have a hypothetical mark right here so we can straighten this out. And what we want to do is pivot it from this corner. Let me actually show you this side here. It actually, right on there, it says pivot from that corner. And so you're going to line that up to that hypothetical mark there and say we need 20-degree line. And so we then take these angles over here and slowly start rotating it out until it hits 20 degrees. Then we take a pencil and we now have a 20-degree line. Next up, let's look at this inner triangle here. This actually has two different types of measurements and tools built in this. So let's first look down here at this bottom with these little lines with the little circles. These little circles here are actually inch marks from this edge over here. So in other words, 1 inch, 2 inch, and 3 inch. Now, this is great if you need to make a bunch of 90-degree lines really quickly. Now, I have a 90-degree line here, so let's say that we needed 2 more lines that are exactly 2 inches apart. So how do we do that really quickly? Well, if you look at these marks again, we can take that first line, line it up with the 2-inch mark that's here, make a line, move that over, do it again off of that one. There we go. 3 lines exactly 2 inches apart. Next up, let's look at this little ribbed edge right here on this side. These are all 1/4-inch marks that line up with your inch marks on the outside over here. So it starts at 1/2 inch, so you 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1 inch, 1 1/4, and so on up through 3 inches. These are great at making straight lines that'll be parallel to our flat edge. For example, let's say we need a 1-inch line going all the way across. So we're going to find that 1-inch mark groove, stick our pencil down in there, and then run it across. And there we go. There's a 1-inch mark from the edge all the way down. Looking at the side of the speed square one more time, you'll see other words, for example, common, top cuts, hip valve, and a bunch of other numbers right in here. These are great if you're a contractor and you're building homes, not so much if you're DIY. So we'll talk about this in a little while. Now, the most common way I use this tool is actually making sure everything is perpendicular or plumb to whatever we're trying to assemble. For example, when we make a cut, we want to make sure it is 90 degrees to the surface that we're attaching it to. So we can attach to the surface and then take your speed square and slowly move it toward it. As long as there's no gaps at the top or the bottom, then it is perpendicular and nice and square. We can also use it on our saw blade just to make sure it is nice and square. Place it on the base, slowly bump it up to the blade, and it should be nice and square. Now let's see if we can find the center of the board real quickly. Yes, I know this is a 2x4, so it's 3.5, but let's say we did not know that. So, with our random size board here, we're going to take our speed square, use that pivot edge again, and we want to find a number that we can half real easily. So, we know the half of 4 is 2 real easily, so we're going to line up that edge with 4. Then right here at the 2, we're going to make a little mark, and now we know that is halfway across. Now let's say we need to cut a 2x4 using a circular saw to get that to the perfect length so we can install it. If we just use a circular saw freehand, there's a good chance it's going to move around on us and that cut is not going to be anywhere close to being straight. So if we take a speed square and we use it as a fence or a guide, we can line everything up, making sure that our fingers are way away from the blade and making sure that the excess length of our speed square is running along that side of that saw, and that cut should be nice and easy and be very straight. Now let's check the squareness of our cut here. I'm going to put this on the bottom so it's easy for you to see. Get it nice and flush against this side, move it to the edge, and look at there, perfectly flush. Now it is possible to use this same process to actually get angled cuts. For example, I have a 15-degree cut here, and you can do that with your circular saw using your speed square as your guide. Just please be careful when you're doing this because your saw is going to want to move around a little bit more on you and it'll be a little bit harder to control than your standard 90-degree cut, but it is possible. Now sometimes when you're building a project you have to build off of something else, and in those cases you need to find where level is. So I just randomly place this board onto this post. I have no clue what angle it is and it'd be nice if I could find level. To do that, of course, we're going to need a speed square and a plumb bob. Well, I don't have a plumb bob on hand, but I made one out of a big screwdriver and a small string. Basically, you just need something heavy on the end of the string to keep it nice and straight. Then we're going to take our plumb bob and we're going to wrap it over the front edge of our speed square here, pulling it out kind of toward the front so it doesn't hang up on any of the grooves that are on the speed square and give us a false reading. So once we have everything in alignment there, we want to now figure out exactly how high we want this line to be, and then get our line to line up with that 45-degree mark right about like so. And once it's in position, take a pencil, do a mark, and that line's nice and level. You can also do a similar process using a speed square and a small level. Let's say you need to find a line that is perpendicular to level, but it needs to be vertical. So we can put the level right on top of the square. We need to slowly raise it up until that bubble is in the middle. Then take a pencil and make your mark. And that line is perpendicular to level. Now, did you know that a speed square can help you make a circle? First, what you need to do is take a nail or a small screw and put it right in the center of where you want it to be. And then you can take your speed square and use it as a guide. Now, some people like to put the nail or screw in this corner. I actually like to put it in this corner because it seems to stay in position a little bit easier. Now remember that each of these grooves is a 1/4 inch. Now let's say we wanted a 1-inch circle, so I need to come over 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll lock it in that corner there, come over to that 4th mark. It should be right there. And then carefully start dragging it around. Now you got to be careful and make sure that your pencil doesn't move around much or that could throw it off. Alright, we have, or should have, a 1-inch radius, so let's test this out. And that is almost perfect. Let's say you need a straight line going along a dowel. That can sometimes be really challenging to get it straight. So if we take a speed square and we place the dowel right on that lip, take a pencil and just draw a couple lines on it, and there you go, perfectly straight line on your dowel. Did you know that a speed square can help you find the center of a circle? I'll just do a random size circle right here on this cardboard, and we're going to use a little help from a framing square, and we're going to line the framing square right up to the edge of that circle there. Make sure not to go over. Then take your speed square and you want to align it to the inside corner of your framing square, making sure you get it centered as possible right there. Then take a pencil and you want to make a mark. Then we want to turn our framing square into a different angle, preferably close to about 90 degrees. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just somewhere close. Get everything lined back up just like we had it before. And once we have it in position, then take a pencil, do a mark again, and there we go, center of a circle. Now let's say you're trying to install some hardwood flooring into your home, and well, you try to line it up and a wall over here, it's just at a weird angle. That could be kind of hard to figure out, or is it? That's when a speed square can come in handy. You want to line up two pieces pretty close to the wall there, making sure they're nice and flush against this side. Take your speed square and line it up against that weird angle. Take a pencil and you want to put it in one of those grooves we showed you earlier. And making sure everything stays nice and flush, draw a line. Now if we take it over and cut this, that should line up perfectly with the wall. Let's try it. And now for the moment of truth. Look at there, almost perfect, and that took you almost no time at all. Whenever you're using a speed square, do your best not to drop it for many heights. In other words, if you're just setting it down and you accidentally bump it on your workbench, not that big of a deal. But if you're up high, let's say you're on the roof or you're doing some up high and it falls a great distance, there's a good chance that you may have bent this in the process. So let me show you a quick way to check and make sure it's still 90 degrees. Now take a piece of scrap wood you know has a nice straight edge. For example, any kind of factory cut should be straight. So what you want to do is take your speed square and line it up with that straight edge. Take a pencil and just do a quick mark. Then flip it over and you want to get real close, not touching, but real close to that line, and do a second line. And if you look real close, if both of those are parallel, then your speed square should be just fine. Here recently, I've seen a few videos where people are actually taking a speed square and kind of using it as a hammer to break up some stuff. That's a horrible idea. That's just as bad as dropping it from a large distance. There's a very good chance you're gonna mess this up. Do not use it as a hammer. Now remember those other numbers and words that are on here? Now, I just want to let you know, for most DIY work, you're never going to use that. Now, if you're a roofer or somebody who puts on roofs or builds homes, that'll definitely come in handy. But I'll just tell you right now, I'm not an expert on those. I do know that it helps you find the pitch of a roof, the height versus run or rise over run, and that'll let you cut the angles and exact measurements that you need really easily. Now, I don't know that very well, so I'm not going to try and get into it in this video. You don't need it anyway if you're just beginning either way. But if you are interested in that information, I'll put a link to a couple of videos in the description that'll tell you exactly how to use those whenever you're trying to use it for roofing. They have a lot more knowledge than I do, and I'll direct you that way. Otherwise, I hope that you enjoyed this video on exactly how to use speed squares. So get out in your shop and have fun building.